Commissioner Moniz.
I regret to say that I have a number of points again, Madam Chairman, but actually, by the way, on that last point of Jonathan's, these concerns being surprising, I might just add that in a very different context, the famous fracking issue, for example, it turns out actually one of the major concerns is simply all the heavy truck movements that comes with that kind of surface industry activity. So it's a very important point, I think. Okay, so a bunch of comments. One is I would urge that as you complete the report, that one goes from recommendation 1 back to finding number 0, which is to, based upon existing literature, especially the Academy, to reinforce the scientific underpinning of long-term geological disposal. Because if you don't emphasize that, the recommendations, I think, don't quite have the appropriate weight. I think in doing that, a second issue comes up that I think we need to capture. Maybe it's not in a recommendation, I don't know, but that is that you say geological disposal in a mine repository, ... and that's true, but I think we have to emphasize that not every mine repository is the same. They have different geochemistries. That relates to the fuel forms, etc. The general idea that we need integrated decisions and not separate decisions. Now, I don't know if that works into a recommendation, but I think it's a very, very important issue, which is ultimately connected to the scientific underpinnings there. Dick mentioned the NRC and a possible need to reevaluate kind of a regulatory approach in a more responsive system. And I agree, but I would like to go back to the NRC-EPA separation, and I don't know if we want to get into this, but a reminder, the EPA regulations for a repository are a jury-rigged bunch, and I think we might consider at least the issue of going back to that. As you know, 10,000 years got pieced on to a couple 100,000 years, and the left leg is connected to the right arm or something, I don't know. So that's another point. I think another point that is missing, which is critical for disposal, is the need to completely redo our waste classification scheme. This is a case where there really are orphans already, and there will be a lot more orphans running around if we change fuel cycles. We need to go to a risk-based system, and I think that belongs here in the disposal section, and I think should be some recommendation which will require statutory actions eventually. You mentioned in the first slide ethics. I'm all for ethics. But yeah, only to a limit. We're dealing with nuclear waste after all. No, but the serious issue is that in fact we had I thought a very good presentation to the Commission on intergenerational issues, and what we don't want to do is to promulgate the simple-minded view that intergenerational responsibility means putting the waste into a hole in your generation. Now, it doesn't say that, but I think it's an issue that we need to be very careful in defining, consistent with our storage recommendations and with the idea of providing options to other generations, in fact. Fifth, I think you mentioned, Jonathan, that we discussed this morning briefly the idea that the new organization needs responsibilities or authorities rather beyond the access to the waste fund. I agree. I think it needs to be. I think it deserves a higher elevation. I think you have two words, institutional means, in 2B, which may be interpreted that way. But I do think we need more, because I think it's absolutely critical. We will not have a meaningful organization if all they have is access to the waste fund. With regard to access to the waste fund, Chairman Hamilton raised an issue about congressional predatory instincts and capabilities, and this is absolutely true. Oh, he didn't? I thought he did. Right. Just as a note that I think there's another analog today, actually, about the value of having statutory language to kind of protect something, and that is again, it's in the natural gas arena. There's something called the Royalty Trust Fund, which is a statutory assignment of a small part of federal oil and gas royalties to support research. It's in statute. The Bush administration and the Obama administration have both proposed zeroing it out, save $50 million a year, but frankly, the statutory language then allows the supporters to much more easily protect it. Now, it's still not bulletproof, but I think if we had statutory language, it could go a long way towards protecting it, particularly with Phil's caveat that the organization has to perform. In that context, there's a leitmotif through many of the discussions about DOE performance with regard to spent fuel management. I think we have been remiss in assigning, in sharing the credit with the Congress for what has happened over the years, and I think it's very important because, again, I think the fundamental error, and we've discussed this, is that it provided a straitjacket for actions, and that's exactly what we cannot afford for a well-functioning system.
The gentleman yield, I think it's really critical we nail that down. Yeah. It's been several times this morning, but setting rigid deadlines and designating one spot turned out to have been not a shortcut, but ended up jeopardizing this and putting the department and putting other players in a position where they could not perform in a way that was expected, or at least we thought was the way we wanted things to happen.
And add to that the financing games, add to that even the research restrictions on looking at alternatives. I mean, it was a absolute narrowest set of options you could ever construct, within which one had no chance of success.
If you don't mind carrying on just a moment, because it's not as if everybody was stupid in making these decisions. It may seem like it now, but the fact is that it was driven by the sense that we were not able to ever politically push the noodle and get decisions made. And so to help push not just the bureaucracy, but the industry and everybody else, that's why this was done as a technique to try to get decisions made. Now, that didn't turn out to work the way we wanted.
Right.
Madam Chair, could I just, are you finished, Ernie?
No, but please, go ahead. Well, if you want to go now, I have more.
I have brief responses to several of them, but please finish.
Oh, well, then hold your powder. We'll number 7, just as a comment on recommendation 4, I strongly support this idea of the consent-based, et cetera. But we also have to acknowledge that the political structures in the comparison cases is a lot simpler than the one we're talking about here, and not sugar-coated to make it look quite so easy.
Right.
Eighth, this is the TRB recommendation. As I probably hinted earlier, I am concerned about layer upon layer upon layer, both outside and inside the department at the moment. But I just wonder the extent to which this was really considered, especially in the context of a new quasi-government organization. And I would just, at some point, like to hear the analytical reasons why that would be supportive. And finally, the pair raised the issue of the boundaries of a defense waste repository. I think there are reasons for wanting a clean definition, similar to WIP, let's say. There are also good reasons for what you raise in terms of other waste and spent fuel, particularly as it sits on defense sites subject to the same arbitrary dates that we have. So I think that's an open discussion, and if the committee would like a kibitzer on that issue, I would be happy to support. Thank you.
So it will take me not more than 60 seconds. I'm not going to respond on geology, but I think your next door neighbor may want to at some point. But there certainly was no misunderstanding in the subcommittee that all holes in the ground are the same. On EPA, if I didn't state strongly enough that we think that...
May I just say, Jeff, but I think even going back beyond that, I think we just need to have a banner about the status of scientific understanding.
I completely take your point. And most of the points you made, we will just take on board. They're very good points. I just didn't state as strongly as I know the subcommittee feels about the need to go back to the EPA regulations and concern about the million-year standard and so forth. On ethics, we do have a good discussion of those issues in the context of retrievability, but didn't apply it more broadly in the context of storage. You're entirely right. I suspect there's complete agreement with what you said. We will try to better articulate the powers that are necessary. I think the report, the full draft of the committee report, is pretty clear that Congress shares the parentage of the problems. But if not clear enough, we'll work on it.